teleSUR English presents a new episode of China Now. Wikimedia's production showcases the culture, technology and politics of the Asian giant. On December 18 at 23:59 local time, a 6.2 magnitude earthquake hit Xishan County in Ningxia, Gansu province with a depth of 10 kilometers. Then on December 22, the earthquake has resulted in 22 deaths and 198 injuries. Now we step up in technologies in a significant recognition of China's technological advancements. The country's space station project and the Harmony OS have been selected as part of the global top 10 engineering achievements for 2023. Let's see.
China Currents is a weekly news talk show from China to the world. We cover viral news about China every week and also give you the newest updates on China's cutting-edge technologies. Let's get started. Hi, welcome to China Currents. I'm Chris. At 11:59 p.m. on December 18th, a 6.2 magnitude earthquake hit Xishan County in Ningxia, Gansu province, with a depth of 10 kilometers. The quake was distinctly felt in several parts of the northwestern China, including Lanzhou in Gansu province, Xi'an in Shanxi province, Wuzhong in Ningxia Hui Autonomous Region, and Xining in Qinghai province. The affected area is known for its high altitude, and the recent cold waves sweeping across northern China has led to nighttime temperatures plummeting to -14 degrees Celsius. Emergency response teams have been dispatched promptly. Minister of Emergency Management Wang Xiangxi, Director of China Earthquake Administration Ming Yiren, and Director of National Fire and Rescue Bureau Chong Se rushed to the quake-hit area in the early hours to oversee and support the earthquake relief effort in Gansu. As of December 20th, the earthquake has resulted in 22 deaths and 198 injuries in Qinghai's Haidong city, with 12 missing. In Gansu, 113 deaths and 782 injuries have been reported. A 4.1 magnitude aftershock occurred on December 21st in Xishan County. As of 9 a.m. on December 20th, the earthquake has caused the collapse of 14,939 houses and damage to 207,204 houses in Gansu, affecting 37,160 households and 145,736 individuals. As of 19th, power supply has been restored across the earthquake-affected areas, and all major highways, including expressways and national and provincial trunk roads, are fully accessible. The Gansu Provincial Seismic and Disaster Relief Headquarters announced on the 20th that the rescue operations in Gansu have mostly concluded. The focus will now shift towards providing medical treatment to the injured and ensure displaced residents are adequately accommodated. Currently, a total of 87,076 individuals have been temporarily relocated to safe areas in Gansu. 19 medical assistance teams comprising 667 personnel and 99 ambulances were dispatched by provincial, prefecture, and county authorities to conduct triage and provide medical treatment. Furthermore, efforts have been made to swiftly relocate and provide temporary shelter to the affected population. To date, a total of 20,457 households comprising 87,076 individuals have been successfully relocated. Emergency relief supplies, including tents, blankets, tent lights, folding beds, and moisture-proof mats, amounted to 128,830 items have been deployed. Authorities continue to monitor the situation closely and provide necessary support to the affected population. The earthquake has brought immense hardship to the people of Gansu and Qinghai provinces, but the collective resilience and determined efforts of the rescue teams and support organizations offer a glimmer of hope in the face of adversity. China urgently deployed various high-tech systems to bolster emergency response operations. State-of-the-art equipment like domestically built Y-20 strategic airlifter, satellite imagery, and specialized drones rushed to the disaster zone, showcasing nationwide coordination. Within hours after tremors severed infrastructure links, the hulking Y-20 took flight from an airbase holding the Western Theater Command's frontline coordinators along with 14 tons of vehicles and supplies. Its spacious hold and hefty capacity are well suited for ferrying bulky relief goods here. But hardware alone cannot survey the damage. Timely eyes in the sky proved equally vital. Once the shaking subsided, Beijing marshaled an ensemble of civil observation satellites to snapshot post-quake conditions, prioritizing target areas, automated systems flagged for their detailed potential. Stitching visual data from various commercial, military, and dual-use platforms enabled quicker routing of response units through treacherous terrain. Officials credited space assets for highlighting impassable roads plus displaced residents. Specialized drones then filled blind spots across the mountains. An emergency variant of the medium-altitude long-endurance wing-launched prototype directly flew from Sichuan to scout the epicenter. Its versatility in bridging communication could mean isolated villages' communication is available first via the robot. They were not just for scouting, but also served as aerial platforms, relaying high-definition videos of the affected areas to the command center in real time. This function was crucial for extending the reach of the rescue efforts, providing commanders with up-to-date visual information from regions that the ground teams couldn't immediately access. Remarkably, vital infrastructure repairs were completed rapidly, even as technology aids continued flooding in. Just the day after landslides obstructed roads and power lines, state-run utilities announced traffic restoration and electricity revival for worst-hit counties. The initial progress enabled more conventional assistance to press deeper towards settlements cut off by debris. Currently, the focus shifted from urgent rescue to treatment and resettlement after teams scoured the wreckage for survivors. With transport re-established, mobile hospitals rotate through makeshift camps for the displaced. Officials also assessed dangerously cracked reservoirs to avert flooding amid aftershocks. As rehabilitation gathers momentum, they say the high-tech edge improved response time and effectiveness despite the deadly disaster's scale. Next up, on December 16th, Kyodo News Agency reported that Fumio Kishida is seeking to raise Japan's military budget for 2024 to 7.7 trillion yen, marking the 10th consecutive year of record-breaking military spending. The allocated funds will primarily be utilized for procuring long-range missiles capable of targeting military installations in foreign territories. Additionally, Japan also intends to establish a military research institute to develop offensive weapons, including next-generation fighter jets. Martin Natalegawa, former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Indonesia, highlighted the contradiction between the Japanese government's persistent claims of avoiding military power status since its defeat in World War II and its current actions. Da Zhigang, director of Chinese Northeast Asia Studies Institute, observed that Japan's concentration on deploying military forces to its southwestern islands, particularly targeting China's Diaoyu Islands, suggests an intention to involve itself in the Taiwan question. On December 18th, the China Coast Guard conducted the patrol within China's territorial waters surrounding the Diaoyu Islands. China has maintained garrison on these islands since as early as 1171, historically considering the Diaoyu Islands as its first line of defense against maritime threats. On the other hand, according to a Kyodo News poll on Sunday, the support rate for Fumio Kishida's cabinet fell to a new low of 22.3%, while that for the ruling Liberal Democratic Party slipped below 30% for the first time since its return to power more than a decade ago. Next up, on technology. In a significant recognition of China's technological advancements, the country's space station project and Harmony OS have been selected as part of the global top 10 engineering achievements for 2023. The announcement was made by the Chinese Academy of Engineering and other institutions in Beijing. These achievements highlight groundbreaking projects and technological innovations that have potential to shape various industries and benefit society as a whole. Among the notable engineering feats included in the list are ChatGPT, China's space station, exascale supercomputer, Baihetan hydropower station, dual asteroid redirection test, the new malaria vaccine, Harmony OS, Spot and Atlas robots, lithium-ion powered batteries, unmanned aerial vehicles. China's space station project and the Harmony OS operating system showcase the nation's commitment to technological advancement and innovation. These achievements further solidify China's presence in the global engineering landscape, highlighting the country's contributions to science progress and technological breakthroughs. As China continues to make strides in various fields of engineering, these accolades underscore the country's dedication to pushing boundaries and shaping the future of technology on a global scale. Next up, AI. According to official Chinese statistical data, the market size of China's large language model sector is anticipated to surge to 13.23 billion yuan by 2023, with a remarkable growth rate of 110%. The Ministry of Industry and Information Technology reports that there are currently more than 19 LLM research and development firms in China. By 2023, the adoption rate of generative artificial intelligence technologies in Chinese enterprises is projected to hit 15%, resulting in an estimated market scale of around 1.44 trillion yuan. Notably, the manufacturing, retail, telecommunications, and healthcare sectors have witnessed rapid growth in the utilization of generative AI. Projections indicate that by 2035, generative AI is poised to contribute nearly 19 trillion yuan in economic value globally, with China's share surpassing an impressive 30 trillion yuan. Next up, on December 19th, Thailand's Royal 50R Group filed a lawsuit seeking 10 billion Thai baht, or around $286 million in compensation from China's Luckin Coffee. The Royal 50R Group claims to have registered the Luckin trademark in Thailand in 2020 for operating coffee shops before Luckin Coffee expanded overseas. The court initially ruled in favor of Luckin, considering it a case of malicious registration, but the Royal 50R Group contested the ruling and ultimately won the case. Luckin now awaits verification of details in its statement announced on December 20th. Luckin Coffee's overseas expansion reflects the rapid growth of China's coffee industry in recent years. In a report released in early December, China now has the most chain coffee shops in the world, with a 58% annual growth rate, surpassing the US. Among the emerging coffee chains, Luckin contributed significantly to the growth, opening over 5,000 shops in the year. In August, Luckin announced its quarterly revenue of $852 million, overtaking Starbucks' $822 million in China. But China's coffee chains, including Luckin, face uphill battles from time to time in paving their ways to the markets. Before the trademark lawsuit in Thailand, Luckin faced allegation of financial fraud in January 2020, only a half a year after its Nasdaq listing. This leads to 85% drop in its US stock price, and its mobile app crashed temporarily due to overwhelming demand for coupon redemption. With changes in management and releases of new products, Luckin overcame the obstacles over the next few years and now seeks to expand overseas. However, for the Chinese coffee chains, the trademark lawsuit only marks the beginning of the challenges they may encounter in entering new markets. Well, that's all for today. Thank you for watching this episode of China Currents. If you have any thoughts and comments about our show, please reach us at the email address below. I'm Chris, looking forward to hearing from you, and see you next time.
We'll go for a short break, but we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to China Now. In the second segment, we have threshold with the story of Captain Li Sanbo on May 14, 2008. The earthquake that happened in Sichuan province, one of the deadliest earthquakes that happened to China in decades, where 69,000 lives were tragically lost. But over in Thinkers Forum, we have Jan Oberg, a political scientific academic, peace researcher, director of Transnational Foundation for Peace and Future Research, talking about his large report of the dissolution of Yugoslavia and why the issue have not happened that way. Enjoy.
A military transport aircraft soared above Maoxian city and is patiently waiting for the clouds to break. On board is Captain Li Zhenbo, and he is making a critical decision. That is when he and his 14 crew members would jump out of the plane. Captain Li was 48 years old, and it has been 6 years since his last mission. He was called back in an emergency, and he doesn't know if he can come out of this alive. Every one of them have written down their last words, and they are prepared to die. Suddenly, the thick layers of clouds parted, revealing a glimpse of the world below for the first time in 2 days. Everything was destroyed. Houses were collapsed, and beneath them are 100,000 people trapped. Without any hesitation, the 15 soldiers plunged from an altitude of 5,000 meters. They free fell for over 1,000 meters. They had no ground markers to guide them. They didn't know where they were landing. They didn't know how the weather might change. And the only thing they could rely on is their instincts. The parachute opened just in time, and thankfully, only Captain Li and one other soldier suffered from minor injuries. The rest touched down safely. In 2008, China was hit with the deadliest earthquake in decades. It was 8 in magnitude, nearly 69,000 lives were tragically lost. The earthquake happened in Sichuan province, a region with an average altitude of about 2,700 meters. There were towering mountains to the north and torrential rains to the south. Maoxian City is 40 kilometers away from the epicenter, Wenchuan. Water supply, electricity, roads, and communication signals were all cut off. It became an island and lost connection to the outside world. Life is ticking away, and parachuting was the only way to send help. And that was how desperate it was. Fast forward to today, 15 years later, another major earthquake struck China, this time in Gansu province. But this time, Captain Li's successors did not have to risk their lives by jumping from 5,000 meters height. At 11:59 p.m. on December 18, 2023, a 6.2 magnitude earthquake hit Jishishan County. Tragically, the earthquake resulted in at least 135 deaths, hundreds wounded, and thousands in need of relocation in the cold that is minus 15 degrees Celsius. This time, instead of relying on parachuting, Winglong 2H drones was enlisted for the detection task of disaster relief. Its cameras detected partially collapsed homes and buildings, damaged infrastructures, and fallen power lines in high-definition footage and revealed vital clues in the aftermath. These real-time images are passed on directly to command centers to ensure maximum support for frontline rescue operations and aid distributions. But that's not all. The Winglong 2H also is an aerial communications hub. It worked to restore mobile network for a 50 square kilometer area so people in need can call for assistance. For 2 days straight, the drone surveyed the county, accumulating over 20 hours of valuable data. It overcomes 2 challenges. 1, it can go where rescue workers cannot physically access, and 2, it allows information to flow from impacted areas. These drones also communicated closely with the satellites. As soon as the tremors were felt, the country's remote sensing satellites started to snap aerial images of the quake zone. The detailed pictures revealed damage across wide stretches of terrain in stunning clarity. You could make out collapsed buildings, landslides that cut up roads, and lakes dammed by rubble. This initial assessment from above helped response team to understand the full scale of devastation on the ground. But more were needed. The Ministry of Emergency Management activated a special emergency protocol involving China's leading space agencies and companies. Over a dozen civilian and commercial satellites were enlisted for the immediate task of imaging the affected areas. Golfin, Environment, Jilin, and other optical satellites shifted their orbit to photograph the disaster screen from multiple angles and high resolution. One such satellite, Golfin 1B, continued to hover overhead. The images it produced are updated regularly, allowing authorities to monitor secondary impacts as the recovery unfolds. Landslides remain a threat as wet season sets in, so the satellite sentinels keep careful watch from the skies. Within hours, Y-20 took flight from an airbase housing the Western Theater Command's frontline coordinators, along with 14 tons of vehicles and supplies. In the aftermath of this devastating earthquake, relief workers faced the challenging task of providing aid in remote areas impacted by the disaster. With infrastructure damage and darkness falling, how can they ensure the safety and welfare of the survivors? Conventional floodlights are bulky and use a lot of power. They are also difficult to transport across wrecked roads. But the multi-rotor drones can fly freely, dispersing bright LED beams across entire settlement points from above. These searchlight-equipped drones hovered overhead like man-made stars. Dozens have been deployed to illuminate temporary tent cities. They're powered by generators on the ground. A single drone's battery lasts over 8 hours, illuminating an area the size of 2 football fields. Even in harsh conditions, their powerful light stays on. With darkness no longer being an obstacle, recovery efforts can continue at night. Just a day after, it was announced that traffic was restored and electricity came back on for the worst-hit regions. This initial progress enabled more conventional assistance to press deeper towards the settlement that was cut off by debris. The focus of relief work was then shifted from urgent rescue to treatment and resettlement of survivors. With transport re-established, mobile hospitals and canteens rotated through makeshift camps. It is clear that the high-tech edge improved response time and effectiveness despite the deadly disaster. The earthquake has brought immense hardship to the people of Gansu and Qinghai provinces, but the collective resilience and determined efforts from the rescue team and support organizations offered a glimmer of hope in the face of adversity. And that is all for this year's Threshold. We all see you in 2024.
I'm a PhD in sociology from way back in time at Lund University in South Sweden. So I'm a social scientist, and I've specialized all my academic life on peace studies. 1974 was my first visit to Yugoslavia, and I think I've been there about 100 times since then, back and forth doing missions, writing about it. We produced in my foundation the largest ever report written about Yugoslavia's dissolution and why it should not have happened that way. It fell apart for a lot of reasons. If you want the 30-second short one, this was a group marriage. Group marriages are difficult. The West exploited the fragmentation that they could use in, if you will, history's traumas. I mean, both the Croats and the Serbs and the Bosnian Muslims have their traumas from the Second World War, where thousands of people were killed. So they could have been, if you will, saved by different Western policies if that was what the West wanted. But the West always wanted to split. Divide et impera. Split and rule. Divide and rule. And so they saw the possibility of getting all these small republics, which they could rule and one by one get into the European Union and then NATO. Something that should never have been done. It was painful for many of us who knew Yugoslavia, loved Yugoslavia, I considered it my third country, to see what happened without any knowledge about the complexity, because Yugoslavia was probably intellectually the most complex conflict anywhere on earth. And it's characterized with, if you do a little thing here, it will have repercussions here throughout Yugoslavia. They didn't understand that. They didn't understand the autonomy solutions that Kosovo was part of, autonomous province part of Serbia, like Vojvodina was an autonomous part of Serbia. And so they invented the idea, for instance, that Slobodan Milosevic, whom I met and carried messages back and forth to the Kosovo Albanian leadership for, that he had a genocide going on the Albanian people. Clinton went up and said, in Milosevic, we have a new Hitler in Europe. And in the moment you say Hitler, you can get people to believe anything because it's so complex that nobody understands anything. There were not 5 people in the ministries of foreign affairs of the European Union who knew anything substantial about the complexities of Yugoslavia. So everything they did was wrong. It's as simple as that. Everything they did was wrong. They were ignorant. They were totally ignorant about the complexities, the histories, the structures, the economies, and all that, and how it worked together. It was a formidable statesmanship to keep Yugoslavia together. All the religions, all the nationalities, all the histories, all the traumas. The solution, of course, was to put in, again, already at that time, pump in weapons. And who did the West pump in weapons to? To those who had been with Hitler and Mussolini, the Croats, the Bosnian Muslims, and the Kosovo Albanians. All had good relations with the Western fascists. Serbs were the one who paid the price, fled to Norway, They were the ones who were slaughtered in Jasenovac, together with Jews and Gypsies. And we didn't side with those because we said Serbs are the bad guys. And why are the Serbs the bad guys? Because they were the small Russians, the wrong Christians, the Orthodox, whom we can't, in the Protestant world, can't trust. And then they had a dictator, his name was Slobodan Milosevic. And when we got rid of him, everything will be fine in Yugoslavia. As stupid a theory as the one says that without Mohammed Farah Aidid in Somalia, everything will be fine in Somalia. Without Saddam Hussein in Iraq, everything will be fine in Iraq. Without Gaddafi in Libya, everything will be fine in Libya. This obsession with focusing on the top leader and think if we get rid of him, everything will be fine. I want to give you a personal story. In 1999, as we know, NATO bombed the hell out of the place in order to get a second Albanian state in Europe. Very unusual, namely Kosovo as an independent state, which of course is the cradle of Serbia, and they wouldn't accept that as an independent state. Shortly after that bombing, I had a meeting with the then president who had taken over after Milosevic. His name was Vojislav Koštunica. I sat with him in his dark little personal flat in Belgrade, and he didn't live in a big posh place. He said, Jan, I want you to know that we've just been told by NATO, who destroyed us a few months ago and used depleted uranium weapons. We've just been told that we will not be able to enter the European Union before we become members of NATO. Think of the arrogance that you first destroy, pulverize a country, cut out a part of it. It's much worse than anything Russia has ever done in Ukraine and Crimea. And then you say, you must become a member of our destructive organization before you can enter the European Union. So I think that Yugoslavia maybe could not be kept together, but it could have been split in a much more peaceful way. And then comes, of course, the the very bizarre story, as you mentioned, in which the corner of the Chinese embassy slightly outside the center was destroyed. And my Serbian friends in Belgrade said at that time, we have redefined what CIA is. It now stands for Can't Identify Anything. Because they allegedly said that it was bombed by mistake. And when the bombing started by NATO in Kosovo and Serbia, people ran down to Macedonia. 800,000 disappeared into that. And the West tried to tell us, I mean, those of us who were there knew it was one big lie, tried to tell us that the 800,000 people had run from Milosevic's ethnic cleansing, whereas it happened a few days after NATO's bombing had started. And, you know, asking Macedonia first to have destroyed its economy thanks to the sanctions, and then take care of 800,000 refugees, that was enough to destroy that country's, let's say, livelihood. Did we ever pay compensation? Did we ever say we apologize for what we did? Strong people, decent people are able to say, I'm sorry. But low-level people, less intelligent, less mature people always think that they always do everything right. And that's a dangerous philosophy for the rest of the world, particularly when you have too many guns in your hands. It gave me something to reflect about what it means to have too much power. The Americans have had too much power and never been humble. And God forbid anybody of the new multipolar world leaders will go the same strange way. That because we have succeeded with certain things, we are no longer humble. The more you succeed and the more power you have, the more humble, the more careful, the more thinking you should do instead of getting to the arrogance of power. As we know, China has come into Serbia, done very good work there, and Serbia is basically part of the Belt and Road Initiative. And the interesting thing is, if you look at the railway building there, it has gone very nicely in Serbia, which is not part of the European Union. But the part of the railway up to Budapest is not ready yet because of EU bureaucracy. So I would advise Mrs. von Leyen to keep her mouth shut about international affairs and see to it that her own union works. And stop talking about Europe because, dear madam, you've never been elected. You profess to be a leader in a democratic European Union with 410 million people, but you've never been elected. And many of these leaders, government leaders, are war criminals, but they will never be convicted. I could give you an example. I live in Sweden, I've done that for more than 50 years, but I was born in Denmark and have followed Danish politics closely all these years. It was an extremely peaceful country where we used to say, if we disagree about something, let's drink a beer and talk. In the 90s, something crept in, probably because the Social Democratic Party, as in all other European countries, are no longer social democratic parties, but right-wing, militarist-oriented countries, countries and governments. And in 1999, Denmark decided, with a social democratic and a liberal party, to bomb in Yugoslavia, in Belgrade, during the dissolution wars of Yugoslavia. After that, Denmark has participated in bombing in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Iraq. It was the main destroyer, together with Norway, of Libya, which were way outside the United Nations mandate, which was to protect people, basically, but they pulverized Libya. And then Syria and Iraq again. And now the Prime Minister of Denmark is basically a megaphone for Washington. Madame Frederiksen was actually for a period a candidate, a possible candidate to become NATO Secretary General. And you may be aware that the Danish Prime Minister, Anders Fogh Rasmussen, who is with no doubt the largest Danish non-convicted war criminal, it made Denmark participate in 4 years of occupation with the Americans of Iraq against the United Nations, against international law. He was rewarded for that by the Americans and was a personal friend of the Bush family. He was rewarded for that occupation, illegal occupation, by becoming a Secretary General of NATO. So my little country is among the worst in Europe.
Why do you so adamantly pursue peace, which sounds like so unreachable and so idealistic? Why do you dedicate your life to that?
Very sweet of you to ask that question. Of course, you may think I had a very unhappy childhood and things like that. It's not the case. Probably I had a very happy childhood. No, that has very much to do with having met people who persuaded me that this was a better thing to do. When I became a sociologist, I thought I would work with industrial sociology. You know, how do workers work in factories and how do we make them more happy and things like that. But I found out that sociology could be used at the global level. And before that, I was at a high school in Aarhus, Denmark. I think I mentioned that I was born in Denmark. And there I had a headmaster of the school who was out of the normal. And I will always be very grateful to him. He would come in and say, well, the teacher in mathematics today is ill and I will teach you this lesson here instead. But I'm not too interested in mathematics, but I'd like to talk with you about when I met Einstein. And he talked about Albert Schweitzer, whom he had met, and he was a staunch believer in nonviolence and Gandhian thinking. He wrote books about generals who at the time in the 50s and 60s were for disarmament. So this dear man, Åke Bertelsen, gave me in a very important period of my life between 16 and 18 at high school level, some inspiration. I can say that he and his wife were also the main organizers of the rescuing of Jews from Denmark to Sweden during the Second World War, and he wrote a book called October 43. So I got pacifism and nonviolent thinking and Gandhian into my high school I mean, today that type of school leader would be impossible. He would be stopped for political censorship or something like that. And then I ran into peace research at Lund University, a dear friend, professor of sociology, Håkan Wiberg, who gave a little 5-point course, 2 months of peace studies. And I said, wow, I'm not going to do industrial sociology. I'm going to do peace studies and work globally. And he took me down, and now it comes a full circle. He took me down to Dubrovnik in 1974 and said, Jan, something is interesting is happening down there. At the time when Johan Galtung, the Norwegian world leader in peace, some call him the father of peace studies, were the director of the center in Yugoslavia. And I said to Johan, do you remember where we met? And he said, no, I don't remember. We met here in 74. No, I said, we met in 68 at my high school in Aarhus, Denmark, because the rector there had invited Johan Galtung to come and speak. And so I've been a pupil of Johan Galtung and other people, of course, since then. And I would like to disagree with one formulation of yours. Peace is not unrealistic. It's not even idealistic. It's damn rational. And no limits to what people can achieve together if they could stop fighting each other, using weapons, wasting human, technological, economic resources on militarism. There's no limits. Humanity can do the most incredible things, but we can't do it if we kill each other. And if we spend all our awakened time on finding out how to make each other's enemies and how to speak bad about other people and speak about enemies everywhere instead of, why do we have enemy analysis? We don't have friendship analysis. So if you ask me, the totally unrealistic path are those who have nuclear weapons and keep on doing militarism and armament and produce new weapons all the time and waste tremendous ecological, human, intellectual and cultural resources on such a stupid thing. It's a disease of humanity, more or less in different parts, but it exists everywhere. And if we could stop that, I know that's a big thing and I may not see that in my lifetime, I'm 72. But if we could stop it, and that's a vision I have, we do our best, my wife and I and the 50 people at the TFF, we do our best to prepare for the period that comes after the warfare and after the militarism, after the empire of the United States has gone. Now, when that has declined, like the Soviet Union has declined, we will be able to create a much better world. The only doubt I have is not that that is right. The doubt I have is, will the United States empire go down with a bang or with a whimper? Gorbachev was a formidably visionary and peaceful person who could have blown up the world with his nuclear weapons, say, okay, the Soviet Union is gone, socialism is gone, we've lost the game, boom. Hitler could have done it if he had had nuclear weapons in his bunker in Berlin. We don't know who sits in the White House the day the Americans find out that we have no empire, nobody's listening to us anymore, we got to change. Will you go down with a bang or a whimper? I hope it'll be a whimper. I hope the United States will go down with grace and not go down in the sense of becoming a third world country or something like that, but go down from its empire. Stop imperialism, stop militarism, stop dominating. That will make the United States a much better country, and it'll make a much better world. The only thing you must promise me never to say is that peace is less realistic, because the most unrealistic is to keep on doing what we do at the moment and hope that humanity will survive. Either we will not survive because we blow it up in nuclear weapons or some other kind of mass warfare, which we are closer to now than we have ever been since 1945. So it is realistic by any standard to work for the reduction of violence, and it's unrealistic to work for the increase of violence. And that's my background, and I am stubborn enough to keep on doing that until I can neither speak or think or talk anymore.
And this was another episode of China Now, a show that opens a window to the present and the future of the Asian Giant. Hope you enjoy it. See you next time.